Welcome back to Squawk Box this morning. One of the biggest stories in the world of business, a U.S. District Court judge denying Visa's request to be removed from a lawsuit that also targets Pornhub and its owner, a company called MindGeek. It stems from a court case brought by a woman who was forced to watch sexually explicit videos of herself be distributed online when she was underage. The judge in the case says, quote, Visa is being kept in this case because it is alleged to have continued to recognize as a merchant an immense, well-known and highly visible business that it knew used its websites to host and monetize child porn. In a statement to CNBC, a Visa spokesperson said this pretrial ruling is disappointing and mischaracterizes Visa's role in its policies and practices. Visa will not tolerate the use of our network for illegal activity. Joining us now to talk about all of this in an exclusive interview is Bill Ackman, CEO of Pershing Square. He has taken a vocal stance against Visa and MindGeek over this lawsuit. And Laila Mickelwait, an activist and founder of the Justice Defense Fund. Thank you for joining us to talk about what is an immensely important story, both when it comes to child pornography, but also to the role that financial services companies, in this case Visa, may have played in it. Bill, I want to start with you because you've been very vocal online about this, and you've also been working behind the scenes related to it. Where does your interest in this come from, and tell us about how it began?
I guess my interest comes from the fact I have 4 daughters, and I read this article that Nick Kristof had written in the Times describing how MindGeek and its companion sites, Pornhub, operates and the harm it's caused and the horror of it all. And one of the centerpieces of the article is how the business persists because it's funded, or the payments are funded through the Visa and MasterCard network. And what shocked me was, the network is, it's one of the greatest businesses in the world, owning the pipes that convey commerce and taking a little royalty on every payment that goes through. But a key part of their business is, Visa's job, if you think about it, is maintaining brand integrity. This is one of the most important brands in the world. When people put a Visa card or a MasterCard or American Express card out of their wallet, what drives them is the power and the quality of the brand. If you think about the most important risks to that brand, reputational risk, regulatory risk. But remarkably, the company, despite being entirely aware that there's child pornography on these sites, and it's littered with child pornography, they continue to provide payment services until the Kristof article, and then they shut down the sites overnight, which would have bankrupted them. And then within a matter of weeks, they reauthorized the merchants and they started accepting payments again. And the crime continues. And, there've been, there've been hearings in Canada, around the world, people doing their best to shut down these companies. And the ultimate regulator is actually Visa, right? Visa tomorrow could shut down MindGeek. We had a court decision that came down on Friday where it was very, very clear that the judge is extremely concerned with the behavior of Visa, and yet Visa continues to provide payment services to Pornhub, and advertising that takes place on Pornhub, premium services. The wheels of commerce of child trafficking are being. Look at. I'm not making up the language. Look at the judge's decision. It's really remarkable.
Laila, you have been fighting this cause for a very long time. You've been in touch with Visa. You've brought your concerns to them directly. There have been emails and other documentation about this. What has been the reaction that you've gotten from Visa?
Yeah, I mean, Visa has known about this for a very, very long time, as you said, not only from my own personal communications all the way up to CEO level executives and VPs, but also through the news. I mean, egregious cases of child rape proliferating in the news cycle. They were very aware that this has been going on. I mean, even as early as 2019, as the London Sunday Times did an investigation of Pornhub, and they found within minutes dozens of videos of illegal content, including children as young as 3 years old. When that was in the news, PayPal immediately withdrew their services from MindGeek completely. Heinz and Unilever has disengaged with them. Every legitimate corporation has stopped doing business with MindGeek, but Visa persists. And they have persisted. They have refused to disengage from this company, essentially, as the judge said, continuing to give them the tools through which they complete their crimes of child trafficking and the distribution and monetization of child pornography. And it's unacceptable. And to this day, I'll tell you, before I got on this show, I went and checked, again, within minutes, dozens of videos that would constitute trafficking, rape, completely blatantly non-consensual content. And I could take my Visa card this moment and I could go purchase ads, 4.6 billion ad impressions on Pornhub every day that Visa enables to be monetized, that actually advertise, monetize, and commercialize the torture and the immortalization of the torture, because these videos, they're downloaded, they're re-uploaded. Victims say, my trauma will live on, but after I'm dead, the harm is so serious. I could take my Visa, I could purchase an ad to make sure that video will continue to be monetized and continue to proliferate on the internet. And Al Kelley needs to stop, and he needs to disengage. Then he needs to implement policies that would prevent this from happening in the future. What does that mean? Just like credit card companies have anti-money laundering policies, they need anti-child exploitation and trafficking policies that say we will not do business with user-generated porn sites unless they reliably verify the age and the unambiguous consent of every individual in every video. And that is what will ultimately halt this exploitation.
Right. Bill, you have said online just in the past 72 hours, effectively, that you believe that there could be huge liability for Visa as a company, for the board and the board members individually, and for Al Kelley personally, potentially even criminally. Why do you say that?
Sure. Really, there are two forms of liability here. There's sort of the traditional breach of fiduciary duty, right? When a company has a product or service that can cause harm, and the cases are the cases of listeria with, soup or jam or something like this, a board has an obligation to have a monitoring system in place to make sure that that product or service is not causing harm. In this case, of course, the payment system being used for illegal activity, which is enabling child trafficking. That's something the board needs to pay very close attention to. They don't have that system in place and they're not properly monitoring that risk. They're exposed to what's called caremark liability. A case ultimately went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court found that boards of directors have personal liability for not having such sort of systems in place. So either they have a system in place or they don't. If they don't, and if they don't, they've got sort of the caremark liability. If they do have a system in place and they understand what's going on, then they have criminal liability for being aware of and facilitating the payments that enable child trafficking. And there is a criminal statute for this. Obviously, the government does not allow this kind of conduct, and the payment rails that enable this conduct, create criminal liability for the CEO. I mean, Laila, as you can tell, is a fierce advocate. She's not afraid to reach out to people in power. She shared with me emails she sent to the company. She's been dealing with, the executive vice president of, global brand reputation and security. I mean, the highest level people in the company who report to the CEO. And what I find particularly, I would say, abhorrent here is if you read the Visa annual report and you read the letter to shareholders, again, another example of a company, what I would call it virtue signaling, talking about how they care about communities, how they care about empowering sort of economically disadvantaged people. And maybe they say that in writing, but here's a way, if you think about the worst harm, economic, physical, mental harm you can impact upon a human being, it's having a child trafficked, and having their video of the rape appear. I mean, it's hard to even talk about. And I find it makes no sense. Any member of this board who hasn't read that court decision. By the way, this is not, this is a judge that Joe Kernan would like. This is an extremely conservative judge. This is a very narrowly written decision. He's not saying that Visa is responsible for anything that takes place. Someone goes and buys a gun using a Visa card. He's not saying that Visa is liable. What he's saying is they are the known accessory to a crime because they've known or should have known that this various MindGeek websites that this activity is taking place today, right? And I don't want to look myself, so Laila can do her thing, but take a look at what's going on here.
Bill, just to put it all on the table here from a disclosure perspective, given that there have been questions about statements you have made over the years and potential stock investments. Do you have a short position, a long position in anything related to this? In Visa, MasterCard, American Express, any type of retailer that you think would either benefit or get hurt from this in some way that I can't even that I don't even know about?
Absolutely not. We own 7 stocks. They're publicly disclosed. I guess Lowe's takes Visa and MasterCard. Okay. But so does restaurant Burger King, use the payment system. But I have no economic involvement here whatsoever, zero. And it's unfortunate that I can't actually advocate on behalf of something that's the benefit of humanity without people assuming I have some side interest. As you know, we gave up short selling a number of years ago, and actually, if I could do it all over again, we would have run the Herbalife campaign without having an economic interest, and the company would have been bankrupt and the victims would have been protected a long time ago. Unfortunately, if a short seller has an economic stake, people assume what they say is not true. So in this case, absolutely no economic interest whatsoever of any kind, period.
And you don't intend to?
I have no interest whatsoever.
Laila, help us with this also from a disclosure perspective. As I was reading about you in the context of this case and the work that you've been doing, there have been critics who have called Traffickinghub, which is the group that you work for, an abolitionist endeavor related to a Kansas City church called the International House of Prayers that's trying to reframe conservative ideas of sexual purity. This from an article in Vanity Fair. And I just wanted to put that on the table so that everybody who's listening to this understands your history as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would respond to that by saying it's absolutely untrue. The Traffickinghub movement is supported by 600 organizations around the world. Sex workers and those in the porn industry have been vocal supporters. The queen of porn, the most famous porn star of all time, has been very vocal in supporting. We have 2.2 million people who have signed the petition to shut down Pornhub and hold its executives accountable from 192 countries. And this is not about legal consensual pornography. This is about sex crime scenes masquerading as pornography on the world's largest porn sites. And this is in the interest of the porn industry itself. So we're not out here to put an end to legal pornography. We're here to put an end to rape, filmed rape, child sexual abuse that's being monetized on mainstream pornography sites, namely Pornhub.
Laila, we're talking about Visa right now, but one of the questions invariably that comes up is, where is MasterCard on this? But also, what about the internet service providers that effectively allow access for the public to get to these sites? And what kind of culpability, accountability you think they should be held to?
Absolutely. Listen, MasterCard is still doing business with MindGeek as well. And I've been in touch with their executives. In the same way, the former CEO recognized child pornography on the sites, child sexual abuse material, and they stopped doing business for a time. They have reinstated their business with the advertising arm of MindGeek, which is how they make 50% of their revenue. And I would just say that, I've spoken, the top executives, management level executives at MindGeek have come to me and they have told me the only thing that they're concerned about, the only thing that can make them change the way that they do business to halt this kind of exploitation is the credit card companies. That is their main concern. And that is why Visa and MasterCard have the most power. They have more power over the situation than government legislation. The moment that they enact policies that require age and consent verification for every person in every video, immediately this company will fall in line. And so I think that their power in all of this is extremely, extremely important.
Hey, Bill, 2 things real quick. Where do you think the line should be? I know this case is narrow, but there are questions about what kind of liability Visa or MasterCard would be otherwise held to in other circumstances. If there was a bar that routinely was, providing drinks to underage kids, for example, or to over-serving people, and they were routinely creating drunk driving issues, for example, should they be held to account? We talked about guns, other things. Where do you think the line should be for this?
I think the line should be extremely narrow. I think that the payment system is a critical part of kind of global infrastructure and commerce, and I think it's an extreme measure when a Visa or MasterCard shuts down a merchant. But if a merchant's business is fundamentally illegal, I mean, actually, it's a pretty simple way to think about it. When online poker was illegal, and it's still illegal in various places, Visa and MasterCard didn't provide payment support for those sites. Pretty straightforward, right? When if you have a site selling heroin and cocaine online, I guarantee you that MasterCard and Visa isn't providing payment support. And if you have a site where people are putting up videos where children are being raped, or anyone is being raped, by the way. And by the way, the site's also filled with adult unconsensual videos and rape and other problems. On the most egregious front, you focus on the kids. My focus here has been on, Visa and MasterCard are both culpable, but here we have a judge that's rendered a decision against Visa, and it's very, very clear what the facts are. Read where the judge is coming from. I encourage everyone to read the decision. I find it extraordinary that a company that really, Visa doesn't actually do very much. Okay, think about their business model. It's a brand. They've got some pipes. They authorize and deauthorize merchants, and then they figure out which sports teams to sponsor, whether the Olympics, and they fight with MasterCard over that. That's fundamentally their business model. And so the thing they need to focus on, what the board needs to focus on, is their reputation and regulatory risk. And by the way, let's not put aside the economic loss here for a second, right? There's a case making its way through the courts now in federal court where the victim is suing. And this is going to be a jury trial, okay? We're actually making sure, in many cases you have a class action lawyer gets together a group of people. That's great for the defendant because they can settle the case pennies on the dollar. It's great for the lawyer because they can make a windfall. In this case, you got a great law firm, Brown Rundick. You got one plaintiff, their first test case, make its way through the courts. How do you think a jury is going to react here? What kind of award are they going to give them? And then take that award and multiply it. Go ahead.
Right.
Yeah, I would add that, this is one plaintiff, but I have victims reaching out to me on a very regular basis. I've been in touch with hundreds.
Right.
And so Visa needs to realize the liability. The floodgates have been opened with this decision. And I guarantee you, you're going to see many lawsuits following this one. This is not the end for Visa.
Laila, we are going to press pause for a second and thank you. And